They drained every cent, $850,000, while my 8-year-old son fought for his life in the ICU. And when I confronted them, my brother-in-law Gideon looked me straight in the eyes and said, "We needed it more than you." I'm Sarah, I'm 39, a single mom running my own design business. But none of that matters now. For 2 weeks, my entire world has been reduced to the beeping monitors and cold, antiseptic air of a hospital hallway. Eli, my sweet boy, is hooked to more tubes than I can count, each breath a fragile miracle. Every dollar drained from my accounts was money I'd painstakingly saved for his care. I never thought my own family could betray me like this. Until that night at the lake house. Gideon sat there smug, whiskey in hand, while my sister Serena stared silently at the floor. He smirked as he casually explained how they needed my life savings more than Eli did, more than I did. But there was one thing they didn't know. I'd found the forged documents, the fake signatures, the proof they thought was buried forever. They believed they'd crushed me, erased me, but they underestimated a mother's rage. Have you ever had your trust shattered by your own family? Tell me when and where you're watching this, because I promise, you'll want to hear how this ends. Justice wasn't going to be quiet this time. I still remember pacing those icy hospital floors, hours blurring into days, praying desperately that Eli would open his eyes again. Every sound echoed sharply, the squeak of nurses' shoes, distant murmurs of worried families, the steady beep of machines marking each heartbeat of my only child. Each beep felt like a lifeline, and each pause between them filled me with dread. In those long, dark hours, I'd repeat one comforting thought. At least I've saved enough. We're going to be okay. Eli's medical bills won't break us. I'd spent a decade building my business from nothing, late nights hunched over my desk, sacrificing vacations and sleep, but it was worth it. Every penny, every sleepless night was meant to protect Eli. One night, numb from exhaustion and needing reassurance, I pulled out my phone to check my accounts. It was supposed to calm my fears, proof that even if the worst came, I could handle it. But my stomach sank when the app opened. I stared in disbelief, checking, Dora. Savings, $0. Business account, $. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I refreshed repeatedly, panic choking me, but the zeros remained. Hands trembling, I dialed the bank. A calm voice on the other end delivered the words that shattered my world. "Yes, ma'am. Several transfers totaling $850,000 were authorized overnight. They came from your device, with verified security questions answered correctly." "No," I whispered hoarsely. "That's impossible, I didn't." She gently interrupted, professional, distant. "Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but our records clearly show these were authorized transactions." My legs buckled. I slid against the cold wall of the ICU hallway, clutching my phone. Someone close, someone who knew me intimately, had betrayed me. The drive to the lake house that night was a blur of headlights and tears. My family gathered there often, a cozy escape now tainted forever. I burst through the door, finding Gideon lounging on the couch, whiskey in hand, Serena sitting quietly beside him, eyes avoiding mine. "Where's my money?" My voice trembled with rage. Gideon smiled casually. "We needed it more than you." The words hit like a slap. I staggered back, shock stealing my breath. "Needed it more? My child is dying, Gideon." Serena finally spoke, barely audible. "Sarah, don't make this about you." "About me?" My voice cracked, disbelief and betrayal mixing. "Eli's fighting for his life, and you drained me dry. How could it not be about me?" Gideon shrugged, taking another slow sip. "You'll figure something out. You always do." The rage inside was suffocating, but I refused to break in front of them. My eyes swept the room. My father's watch, precious and irreplaceable, glinting arrogantly on Gideon's wrist. It was my father's final gift before he died. How could Gideon wear it like some trophy? Later, Serena texted, twisting the knife deeper. "We're all struggling, don't be selfish." That night, at dinner, they moved my chair away from the family, near the kitchen where the servers brushed past. A clear message of where I belonged now. I sat there, eyes burning, throat aching, watching Gideon raise a toast, dripping with false sympathy. Some people just aren't cut out for managing money. It's sad, really. A few chuckled nervously, avoiding my eyes, complicit in my humiliation. I saw clearly then how alone I truly was. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst was their silence, how quickly they'd erased my worth, my dignity, and even my father's memory from my own story. I wanted to scream, expose their cruelty right there, but I didn't. Silence wasn't surrender. It was preparation. They didn't know it yet, but they had woken something fierce in me, something they couldn't control or erase. Every day after that dinner at the lake house, I moved like a shadow, quiet, watching, collecting strength. No one from my family came to the hospital. Not a single visit. No text. No call. Just silence, as if I had vanished from their world the moment I stopped being useful. I lived between Eli's ICU room and my apartment, barely eating, barely sleeping. I took on any freelance work I could, logos, websites, even marketing materials for local businesses. My nights were sleepless, fingers stiff over the keyboard, eyes blurry with fatigue. Each dollar earned felt like a grain of rice against a landslide. I was drowning, and the people who were supposed to be my lifeline had watched me sink. Gideon, meanwhile, was thriving. His Instagram was a slap in the face. Photos of rooftop dinners, new watches, spa days with Serena. Paid for with my money. Money that was supposed to be for Eli's surgeries, for his recovery. It was rage, not hope, that kept me going. Still, I stayed quiet. I needed proof, not pity. I started keeping detailed logs, screenshots of financial activity, photos of statements, time-stamped emails. I backed up everything twice, stored hard copies at a friend's house. It became an obsession, like stitching armor from paper and truth. One night, I returned to the lake house while they were out. My father's study had always been off-limits, even after his death. Serena claimed she wanted it untouched for sentimental reasons, but I knew her well enough to recognize deflection. I used the spare key hidden behind the old oak planter. The air inside the study was stale, the dust undisturbed, but something felt off. The drawers were messier than I remembered. My father was meticulous. This looked rushed, like someone had gone through them in a hurry. After an hour of searching, I found a large envelope tucked beneath property tax folders. My name was written on it, in my father's handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were estate documents, real ones, not the ones Serena and Gideon had presented at the family meeting. These papers named me as a rightful heir to the lake house and a 35% stake in our family's business holdings. They were notarized a month before my father passed. The forged version I'd seen earlier had completely erased me. It was like a punch to the gut, but this time, it hurt in a different way. Because it meant I hadn't imagined it. I wasn't crazy. They'd stolen not just my money, but my father's final wishes. His love. His legacy. I started researching inheritance laws, forgery penalties, and how digital footprints work. Every night, after Eli fell asleep, I studied legal blogs and forums instead of watching TV. I read through old emails my father sent, looking for language that proved his intent, his trust in me, his wishes for the estate. At the same time, I began keeping a record of every interaction I had with Serena and Gideon. Every time they dismissed my questions or ignored my calls, I wrote it down. Every lie they told, I documented it. I created a timeline, mapping every betrayal against every hospital visit I made alone. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing, not even the nurses at the hospital who kindly offered to help, or the one friend who still checked in every few days. This war wasn't one I could fight out loud, not yet, but deep down, I knew my silence would become my sharpest weapon. What they stole from me was more than money. They'd taken my right to grieve, to heal, to hold on to the pieces of my father that still remained. But I wasn't going to let them write me out of my own life. I was going to reclaim it, page by page, signature by signature. The envelope was still in my bag when I walked into the hospital the next morning. I hadn't slept, but I didn't feel tired. My body was running on something else now. Adrenaline, fury, resolve. Eli was stable for the moment, and that gave me just enough space to think. Later that day, I got a call from the hospital billing department. I stepped out into the hallway, phone pressed to my ear, heart in my throat. "Ms. Carter," the woman said gently, "we've run into an issue with your insurance." My stomach dropped. The last 3 payments were reversed. Reversed? I didn't understand. I had paid them. I had the confirmation emails, the statements. My voice cracked. "No, that's wrong. I paid everything, on time." The woman paused. "The payments were refunded to an alternate account. One linked to your business address, but under a different name." I froze. That wasn't a mistake. That was deliberate. And there was only one person who had access to my business files, passwords, and identity documents. Gideon. I barely remember hanging up. I just remember the ringing in my ears, the slow collapse of everything I thought I still had. Not just my savings. He was now actively sabotaging Eli's care. My vision blurred as I made my way back to the waiting room. I sank into a chair and stared at the floor, chest heaving. How far were they willing to go? It wasn't just theft anymore. It was war. That night, I drove to the lake house again. I don't even know what I planned to do. Scream, throw something, demand they face me. But when I got there, the house was full. Laughter spilled out onto the porch, lights glowing warm through the windows. Another dinner party. And I wasn't invited. I stood outside, watching from the dark like a ghost. My father's house, his legacy, and they were celebrating inside it like I never existed. Then I saw it. Serena walking past the window, holding a wine glass and smiling, like everything was fine. Like she wasn't part of the theft, the silence, the betrayal. I turned and got back in my car, but I didn't drive home. Instead, I went to the only person who might believe me, Marcy, my cousin. She opened the door in pajamas, blinking in surprise. Sarah? I stepped inside, hands shaking. I need your help. She led me to the kitchen and poured tea like it was still some normal night. But when I told her everything, every transfer, every forgery, every lie, her face changed. And then she said the one thing I hadn't expected. I think I have something you can use. Marcy opened her phone and tapped through voice memos. Gideon got drunk last month. He was bragging. I recorded it because, I don't know, something felt off. She hit play. His voice filled the kitchen, slurred, arrogant, unmistakably Gideon. She had no idea, signed it all over like a good little puppet. I rewrote her dad's will and she's too stupid to know it. I gasped, my hands flew to my mouth, it was real. He said it, out loud, on record. I felt my knees give, but this time from something else. Not despair, but vindication. Finally, I had proof. Before I left Marcy's house that night, she made me promise not to confront him alone. You need backup, she said. This isn't just about family drama anymore. It's criminal. She offered to connect me with someone she trusted, an old college friend who worked as a legal investigator. I nodded, barely able to speak. The idea of having someone in my corner after feeling so alone for so long, it was overwhelming. As I drove home, the city lights blurred through my windshield. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like clarity. This wasn't about getting even anymore. It was about reclaiming the truth, about protecting my son, about finally being seen. And I knew exactly where to start. Drake met me at a quiet co-working space downtown. He was tall, sharply dressed, and spoke like a man who'd seen this kind of betrayal more times than he cared to count. Marcy told me enough, he said, eyes scanning the notes I brought. You've been gaslit, defrauded, and erased. But we can win this. We just need the paper trail to talk louder than their lies. He wasn't warm. He didn't sugarcoat things. And I liked him for it. Over the next few days, we created a plan. Drake filed formal requests to my bank and payment processors to pull login histories, transaction IP addresses, device fingerprints. He reached out to the notary who allegedly witnessed the rewritten will. And surprise, the notary had no record of ever meeting me or my father. Each lie began to crumble, one line at a time. Meanwhile, I rehearsed my part. The camera Drake gave me was small, hidden inside a button on my coat. The plan was simple. I'd return to the lake house, pretend to let go, lull Gideon into bragging again. This time I'd catch every word. The return visit was nauseating. Serena greeted me at the door with a watery smile, as if we'd just had a silly misunderstanding. Gideon, of course, was pouring drinks like nothing had happened. You look tired, he smirked. Motherhood, right? I clenched my teeth and smiled. Something like that. The evening dragged on. I let him lead the conversation. When he asked if I was still mad, I laughed softly and said, I guess I overreacted. You were just trying to help the family. That was all he needed. A few drinks later, he leaned in. Honestly, I did you a favor. You were never going to manage that inheritance properly. You think Dad wanted you to be the one making decisions? He chuckled. I rewrote it. Everything. Business shares, the lake house, the accounts. I fixed it. Click. The camera caught everything. Drake nearly cheered when I handed him the footage. That's the nail in the coffin, he said. Now we hit them where it hurts. Publicly, legally, financially. Within 48 hours, Drake filed for an emergency hearing. We submitted evidence, voice recordings, banking metadata, notary denials, and sworn testimony from Marcy. It was airtight. I also sent out a message to the entire extended family. Please be at the lake house Friday evening. It's time the truth came out. When I arrived that night, the room was full. Aunts, uncles, cousins, some hesitant, some curious, some looking at me like a storm they didn't see coming. Gideon was already there, standing near the fireplace, drink in hand like always. "What's this about?" he asked, smug. I walked to the center of the room, pulled out my laptop, and hit play. His voice filled the space. I rewrote it. Everything. Business shares, the lake house, the accounts. I fixed it. Silence. A few gasps. One of my uncles whispered a curse. Before Gideon could open his mouth, Drake stepped forward with documents in hand. "You're being served. Fraud, theft, and identity tampering. You're done." The sheriff arrived 15 minutes later. Gideon's smirk dissolved as the cuffs clicked into place. Serena cried. The family watched in stunned silence. After the sheriff left, the room stayed frozen in a kind of stunned silence. A few relatives turned toward me, not with pity, but with something closer to respect. No one had ever stood up to Gideon before, not like this. Serena slumped onto the couch, her mascara smudged, hands shaking. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her silence was finally honest. I turned to face them all. "You watched him take everything, and you said nothing. I'm not asking for your guilt, but I am reclaiming my place in this family, starting now." I didn't flinch. For the first time in a long time, I stood tall. Let them call me difficult. Let them call me dramatic. I didn't care. I had reclaimed my voice, and I wasn't done yet. The weeks after the arrest moved slowly, like I was walking through molasses, but for the first time, I was moving forward. Gideon's empire began to collapse. His smug silence was replaced by frantic phone calls, court orders, and asset freezes. Drake helped me build the case piece by piece, reclaiming everything he stole, starting with the $850,000 and ending with my rightful stake in the lake house. But the biggest shift wasn't legal. It was internal. I spent mornings with Eli in the hospital, his color returning, his grip growing stronger. And every time I held his hand, I reminded myself, he is the reason I never gave up. Then one evening, Serena showed up at my door. No makeup, no armor, just a trembling woman carrying guilt like a weight she couldn't put down. "I signed it all back over," she said, voice shaking. "The estate, the business shares, everything he made me think I deserved. I didn't. You did. I'm sorry." I didn't answer right away. I didn't hug her or forgive her. But I nodded. That was enough for now. Weeks passed. Slowly, I took back what was mine. The court ruled in my favor. The banks restored the stolen funds. The revised will was thrown out. Gideon's charges stuck. And one sunny morning, I returned to the lake house with Eli. We walked the halls together. I showed him where I used to sleep as a girl, where Grandpa carved our initials into the porch rail. I watched him run along the dock like nothing had ever touched his innocence. Before we left, I placed his little blue bear, faded and stitched at the neck, on the mantel. A reminder of how close I came to losing everything, and how I didn't. I stood there, holding my son's hand, sunlight pouring across the wooden floors, and I whispered to myself, they tried to erase me, but I'm still here. This house, this peace, this boy beside me, it's all mine now. Let them choke on their silence. I've found my voice. And if you've ever been told to let it go when someone stole your worth, don't. Fight for it. Quietly, loudly, strategically. Just don't vanish. Because survival isn't the end. Taking your power back is. If this story hit you in the chest, if you've ever been silenced or stolen from, don't scroll past. Leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. And if you know someone who needs this kind of fire, share it. Because stories like this don't just stay stories. They become power.